Welcome back to the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief content producer and writer of jakestake.com, a pop culture entertainment news website. Guys, before we get to my introduction, please subscribe and like this video if you're watching us on YouTube, and if you're listening to our podcast, please give us a 5-star review and subscribe. I'm very excited to welcome one of my favorite new podcast hosts. He hosts Behind the Velvet Rope, which basically takes everyone behind the scenes in the entertainment industry. So please help me welcome the host, David Yontef.
Thank you so much for having me, Jacob. It is great to be here today. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a privilege to talk with you.
Well, thank you for having me. You know, there's a lot going on, right? It's been a busy year, we were just saying.
Oh, yes. All righty. So anyway, when did you get interested in media, and how did that passion evolve into the desire to pursue a career in the entertainment industry?
I literally say that I have reinvented myself many times in business, which really is true. I went to law school and practiced corporate tax law for about 4 years, never liked it. You know, this is why, in my spare time, which I don't have any of, I have like a side hustle, which is I hold like Zoom business advices for podcasts and how to grow a podcast and just kind of like reinvent yourself in business. Like, I practiced corporate tax law, never liked it, eventually got up enough courage to quit, went into HR and recruiting. I had my own recruiting firm. I sold that. I ran recruiting in-house for a lot of large companies like Martha Stewart. Yes, I worked directly for Martha Stewart. That's a whole nother story. I know, see people's mouths drop open. People want me to talk about this, and I will at some point, and it's probably exactly what you expect. I have stories that could go on for days. So I worked for a lot. So once I sold my company, which was a recruiting firm, I went in-house, ran HR and recruiting. I worked for so many companies that kept merging. So when my last company merged, which was not Martha Stewart, I was just like, having sold a company, like I had the financial wherewithal to not necessarily work. And I didn't. And then I just started hanging out with a lot of the people on Bravo. Look, this isn't Beyonce. This isn't like Jay-Z and, the King and Queen, or, Harry and Meghan. If you want to, you have access to these reality people. And listen, does it help that I live in New York City? Of course. We have Jersey Shore. We have Summer House. We have New York Housewives. We have New Jersey Housewives. So I just kind of put myself in situations where I would meet these people on reality TV and kind of organically became friends with a lot of them. I wasn't working, so I had the time. I was a lady of leisure, as I say. And then the more that I hung out with all these people, I was like, this has to be a business. It's like, I relate it to if you are born a child of a celebrity. Like, at some point, like, it's your life, you don't know any different, but at some point you probably have the ability to step outside of yourself and say, like, all these things. Like, I had Randy Spelling on my show, and some of the questions I was so interested in are like, when did you realize, like, Randy Spelling growing up at Spelling Manor, which is 50,000 square feet, or the largest house in Holmby Hills, when did you realize your life was not like other people? So at some point when I was hanging out with all of these housewives and reality people, I was like, there has to be a business. The average person is not here, at 2 a.m. and seeing who's getting drunk and who's kissing who. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, but it's some type of business. And then one day it came to me, like, maybe this is a podcast format. So that's where the name Behind the Velvet Rope comes from. I started it really more for like a business aspect of, I always loved reality TV. I loved The Simple Life and The Hills way back in the day. And I grew up loving pop culture, 90210, Melrose Place. So I was always into pop culture. So when I started my podcast, Behind the Velvet Rope, it really was to talk about these stories of what is happening when they're not filming. I've been to a ton of filming with like the Bravo people. It's not fun. You're not going to like cause drama and be on camera. You can't even get to your friends. Like, you're there, but you're hanging out with other people that are not on the show. If you go and you try to insert yourself, you're going to A, be kicked out, and B, you're never going to be invited back, and it's going to be edited out anyway. So when I started this, I was like, these when we're not filming and I'm hanging out with these people, these are some interesting stories. And my pilot episode was me in Florida at a dinner with Kelly Dodd, Dolores Catania, Ramona Singer, and Rick Leventhal. And I'm like,
Wow.
Right. And listen, if anything is really confidential, I've been around people where they're like, this is not for the podcast. I'm like, I'm not stupid. You're telling me that you're going to file for divorce in 4 weeks and nobody knows. You're telling me, something that's coming up on the show. You just know what not to say because I'm not going to get cut off at the knees. So that was my pilot episode. And I'm like, I don't know if anyone cares. Like maybe this is in my head. Maybe this isn't it. I put out that pilot episode, which is the first time I did a podcast talking about this dinner, and people went crazy. They're like, it was little things. Like, yes, Ramona Singer has ordered the entire Branzino and eaten half of it and is on her second martini before me and Dolores are even in our seats. Also, because I have Stockholm syndrome when it comes to Ramona, my good friend Dolores is sitting at the end of the table. I acted like Dolores wasn't even alive. Good friend, I'm like, Dolores will be there in the morning. I want to sit next to Ramona. So it's like these funny little stories of what happened, and I left with Ramona's phone number, and then I was scared to use it, and what Kelly and Rick were saying, and I'm like, okay, people are into this. So when I started my podcast, it was to have like one show a week that's these stories, one show a week that's an interview. COVID hit, and my show just exploded. And then I morphed it and turned it into a 5-day-a-week interview podcast. I have a Patreon, all these little stories. I'm just like, if you want to hear my stories and my personal things of what these housewives, like I was just in the Hamptons with Barb K and Elise all week. You want to hear what happens when Barb K and Elise and I hung out? Okay, go to Patreon. Not a shameless plug. Sorry, pay $4. Like those just, I have turned, the main show has become a 5-day-a-week interview show, which I think is what people really wanted to hear. And so it's not just Bravo. It's like 80%, it's like 85% Bravo. But I am now a journalist. I don't have an opinion on my show. You'll never hear me talk like this. It is literally like this person is coming on in all these other interviews, which danced around the subject and asked nice, happy questions. I want to cut through all that bullshit. I want to ask what people truly want to hear. Like, these are the questions that our people want to know. Like, let's break the fourth wall. Forget about what you saw on TV. I want to know in real life, what is going on? What was around this drama? And so that's what my show has really become. And it's kind of become a thing, I think, because, listen, I think most of the people that listen to my show love me and are like, yay, go David. There are people that don't like me that will DM me or leave a nasty comment, and they will literally point to like 7 different shows that they listen to. That was my goal. Like, whether you like me or not, it is not about me. You might hate me, but I just had Luann on, and now I had Ebony on, and I have a lot more Roni coming up. So you like the guests, and you know my interview with Ebony Williams is not going to be the typical button it up with a bow and let's talk about it. We're going to get into it, and I need real answers. And that's kind of what my show has become. And it's like this whole set of skills of like, I am like this reporter. I'm like a journalist now. It's not, I always tell people when I go on podcasts and chats like this, if the subject, like if you are annoyed with me by the end of this chat with Jacob, you should still tune into my show because you're never going to hear about me. Yeah, sometimes I'll say, oh, I agree, Heather Dubrow. I'm a morning person too. I go to the gym at the crack of dawn. I'll throw little things in, but it's not about me. And I have listened to a lot of other podcasts that do interviews, not even to the extent I do, which is like an hour to an hour and a half. I feel so many people interrupt the guest. And it's like, I have learned, and my show's also gotten a ton of media, like TMZ, Wendy, like we're in the press. So I've learned when someone is talking, it's not just shut the hell up. It's whatever they say, you got to get it out. So it's just become like a different set of skills. And I was doing a podcast like yesterday, and someone's like, how do you add these questions are so intrusive, not in a bad way, but how do you ask? And it's just, I have to. Sometimes the questions are so egregious that I am like literally digging my nail into my wrist when I'm about to ask this, but I can't not ask this. And if someone says something controversial, I have to go there. And now we have to stay on this. And I mean, I've talked about like suicide and just like dark issues that like we have to delve into. So like, I'm not afraid to go there. I would say every now and then I have scrapped questions, like a game day decision. Very few. But I can't even think of examples, but it's where it's like, I'm literally on air with you and I'm still questioning whether this is valid or not. And this is too tacky. I'm like, it's probably too tacky. Just scrap the damn question. Like, we got enough. And it's always there. It's like, if we didn't get something, maybe I would ask this. And I can't even think of an example, but I know once or twice I felt like, okay, well, I scrapped that. And I mean, that was the right thing to do.
I totally agree, because the thing is, I go through interviews and it's always tough to, when you're saying, okay, you hit A, B, C, and D, let's move on from that question.
It's hard. Sometimes, look, I mean, there's all different types of interviews. I mean, and the other thing is, I don't have people on that I necessarily like. It's not about me. I will have, I don't take teams because, yes, do I have an opinion about who I like better between Monique and Candace from Potomac? Do I have an opinion of who I like better between Lisa Barlow and Whitney from Salt Lake City? Sure. I've had both on my show. I'm not going to reveal that opinion. It's not up to me. So like I don't judge people based on what I see on the show. There's a lot of interaction. Even I have a whole team I work with. They book a lot of people. So but there's still interaction before the interview and after. And it's like, that's how I judge someone. So if Candace is saying all this crap on Twitter and everyone hates her and what happened on the TV, like my one-on-one, like if you read shit about me online, God knows there's so much good stuff. There's bad stuff. Like I will speak of you, Jacob, based on one-on-one, maybe our text before and after. So I don't care what someone else says about someone. I don't care what's happening on the TV. So when I watch these shows, I don't have a team. Like I have an opinion. Yeah, of course. I like certain people better, but I can't be one of those podcasts that interviews people or talks about things as if it's the real world. I'm not saying the reality shows are fake. They're not. But I'm more interested, like Candace, your head was on a table being held down and your hair was being pulled. So that is what we saw. That's real. But like, I need to know, what did we not see? Where was Bravo? Did they step in 3 minutes or was it 40 minutes? Did they put up their hands and say, back off? Don't help. We have to get this on. Like, these are the things that I want to know. And then the audience is like, yeah, I don't know why no one else asked those questions. That's just one example. So I feel like I always go there and I don't shy away. And I feel like if I have the question and it's crossed my mind, chances are, and then people are always like, that's the one question I've been dying for someone to ask. So it's just kind of become that type of show. I don't even know what your question was. I've gone off on a tangent here, Jacob.
Don't worry, you explained almost half of the questions that we were supposed to talk about. So
well, that's good.
All right, but however, we got to talk about your interviews because they are headline making and they also make a lot of stuff. So we got to get to, I picked up a few of them because we could go on and on about some of the guests. But however, these 6 specific guests are celebrities I really liked and also it's surprising things. Speaking of surprising, Melissa Rivers.
And you don't have to like them. That's what I always say to people too. People are always afraid to tell me. I'm like, if you hated someone before the interview and you hate them after, that's okay. I never said I like everyone. I don't believe sometimes half the things that come out of people's mouth. I just don't reveal that. But people are always afraid to tell me I hated okay, you hated the guest. Well, that's fine. But go on. Sorry.
No problem. I want to say, because I really like Melissa Rivers and I really wish that I had Joan and Melissa on together when I was starting out, because it would have been so much fun having both of them on. But hearing this was real, like I know about the red carpet stuff because she's been talking about ad nauseum, and I think with you, she said enough with the red carpet stuff. However, what I did not know was the Miss Maisel snubbing, which was huge.
It was huge. And so that's the thing. So Melissa Rivers has been on twice. So like, to me, she's the perfect guest. I love when a guest can check so many different boxes. So we can talk about Joan. We can talk about reality TV. You did Joan and Melissa, Joan and Melissa, Who Knows Best. That's a reality show. So now we have that. We can talk about Fashion Police. Now we can talk about fashion. Wait, Nene was a judge on Fashion Police. Now we could talk Housewives. Like, I love when someone fits in so many different boxes that are on brand for my pop culture podcast that now we can cover it all. Yes. And that's the other thing. So I interview and have a certain style, and it is for the audience, and we have to get answers for the audience. And that is always 90% of the show, and not with every guest, but with most guests. Because my show has been in the press so much, I know what to ask of like, this could be the press hit. It's not about my ego. I don't need to see my name in print, but I do, because then that leads to click-throughs, and it's all about the business to me. And that leads to more downloads. And now all the people out there that don't like Housewives or Bravo, we just got another however many downloads and new listeners now because of this story about Maisel. So the first time I interviewed Melissa, I said, that is it. This will go viral. My entire interview with Melissa can be summed up in one minute. What would Joan Rivers, who is known for Who Are You Wearing and Fashion Police, say about this world and wearing a mask? Period. The end. No one cares in the mainstream media, not the blogs. I'm talking like us and People and TMZ and the real big ones, Access Hollywood. That is it. I don't care if Melissa says it. I don't need to listen. I can go to sleep when Melissa's answering that question. Whatever she says is going to go around the world. It's not always the case, but 90% of the time, I know where that press question is. So this is all about a great interview in the audience, but I was like, this is it. And I have to ask this, and it has to be in there. So if we're going down that road and Melissa steers us completely left, I will have to just be like, changing the subject. Here you go. Here's my question. I won't get off. And it's like, then when I get that answer, and what she said, she was like, are you kidding me? She's like, my mother would be thrilled. It would hide all the plastic surgery. I was like, and right. See, like, it's a nothing. It's not a story. It's not like, it doesn't matter. That is a headline. That is a soundbite. It went every single country. Joan Rivers would love wearing a mask. That's where it's like, so the second time Melissa came back, I'm like, well, how the hell am I going to top that? And not every show needs to go get viral press, but it would be nice. And I just was like, she doesn't really want to talk about this Maisel thing. She's been asked before. And I'm like, look, I had a great relationship with her. It was like, it could fall flat. She could say, I don't want to talk about it. But the more I'm just like, I have to ask, because this could be a thing. And the more she started talking and opening up, I was like, okay, well, she's never said all this before, and this is now going to be a thing. You can say what you want. I mean, it comes from Melissa Rivers, whether you agree or not. Because a lot of people were like, bullshit and blah, blah, blah. She needs to get over it. I'm like, I agree with her. I think that is clearly based on Joan Rivers. But whether you agree or not, Melissa Rivers speaking on the matter and saying how hurt she is, and the only person to ever acknowledge it was Jane Lynch at the Emmys, and she sent her flowers. Like, the more detailed someone gets, you're like, oh shit, like, this is going to be a story now.
And speaking of detail and stories, I was just listening to your episode of Landry. Wow, I did not know how badly toxic that Mario Lopez thing is allegedly happened. And also, number two, how deeply connected she is to the Housewife franchise.
She's an example of somebody who I was excited to interview. Again, checks a lot of boxes. Her name comes up every year when they're casting Beverly Hills. She knows Kyle. She knows Kris Jenner. She knows them all. So, like, there's that box, which makes me excited. You know, she was the Doritos girl. That's interesting. But right, the fact that she was married, pop culture, to Mario Lopez from Saved by the Bell, who is now, you know, on Access Hollywood, and it was a messy divorce, and he cheated. I was like, Allie fits so many boxes. So I was like excited to talk to her. I wasn't like, this is the blockbuster. This is her. You know, she's like a smaller name, maybe compared to some other people. The nicest, most gracious. I was like, you just can't tell. And very open. Because listen, she could have said like, yes, it wasn't pleasant with Mario and let's move on. She went there, and you have like a backstory sometimes in your head of who's going to go there and not. And had a feeling she was not going to go there. I was like, we're going to ask about Mario and the fact that he cheated, and like, how did that feel? And like, did you grow? I mean, this is the example of the question. That's not okay with that. I want to know, like, did you grow up watching Saved by the Bell? Because you're of the age that you did. And now it's like Mario Lopez, like, and what? So I like to ask questions like that. But yeah, she was just one of those people that I expected to kind of be colder and just cut me off. And I was like leading up to it, like, how do I bring up the fact that he cheated on you? And like, but I have to. And she was just so game, and we stayed on it for a long time. And I'm like, wow. Like, to your point, I was like, wow, this is a lot of information about how this man wasn't faithful to you and how you felt and how you rebuilt your life. It was a good one.
Another good one. I gotta go. This one, Lady Bunny. She talks about cancel culture, and not to mention the epic Joan Rivers and Ellen feud.
Yes, and yeah. So like, Lady Bunny, who you would think, I mean, Lady Bunny is liberal. You would think that she would be all about the cancel culture because she is so liberal. And, hashtag everything, Me Too, BLM. You would think Lady Bunny would be like, thank God all these horrible people are being canceled. And it was like the exact opposite. Even though she's a famous drag queen, she was just like, this is a loss of freedom. That is what we are. We have no more freedom of speech in the US, and this is ridiculous. And so that's an example of where like you expect this whole interview to go one way, and you're just like, wow, who knew Lady Bunny felt this way? And she was like, I think you should be able to say whatever the fuck you want. And then that brings up Joan Rivers, like, our comics exempt, and how would Joan Rivers handle this? Because I'm pretty sure, and I asked Melissa, Joan will be making her off-color. I went to see comedy last night with my good friend Rachel Yucatel, who I had on my show. The comedians, I mean, things are open in New York now, and there's all these top comedians. Comedians are still making very off-color jokes, and I'm okay. I am personally okay with that. So and these are comedians of every color and race and sexuality, like sexual orientation. So it just like brings up the issue with Lady Bunny, like, our comics, like, isn't that the definition of your job? So I don't know. It was a really interesting conversation with Lady Bunny, who you would think would have just been like very liberal and like cancel the conservatives and people that aren't open to, and she was the exact opposite. She was like, this isn't okay. You should be able to say whatever you want.
I totally agree with that. And also, we forgot to touch on Ellen and Joan Rivers' relationship, because I did think she did a good job describing it. Like, besides Kathy Griffin and Melissa, those are the only three people I think perfectly summed up Ellen's relationship with Joan Rivers.
I think so. I mean, look, there's all this stuff out there about a feud between the two of them. And, according to Melissa, it's no, like, she was treated well by Ellen and it's all hyped up. I mean, that's certainly not the answer that I expected, but I thought that was really interesting. And that's the thing. It's like, there are some guests, and this has nothing to do with Melissa, where it's just like, it's their truth. It's their truth. So people will DM me and be like, I can think of two specific examples where someone's like, that person, I don't think anything they said was really valid. And I'm saying to myself, yes, I can think of at least two examples where I think not like 199% of what each of these two people said to me was, I don't believe it. And I don't believe a lot of stuff, but I didn't believe any of it. Like, I think you had an axe to grind. I think that behind the velvet rope gets pressed. You know it. So that you're saying all this shit, and it's going to be in the media, and you want your own name in the media. I mean, that's okay. You can use me for that, but it's not my place to say bullshit. It's just not. It's their truth, and it's my job to get their truth out there and exposed, and then your job as the audience to say, like, I think that person's full of shit. Or, I mean, a lot of times people will say, like, I hated that person before, and now I see a different side of them. That is great. That's a home run. I'm like, thank you. But that's not my goal. My goal isn't like to make you like everyone that I interview. if we're going down a road and someone's insufferable, I'm like, we can keep on this road. You're going to hate this person. Everyone's going to hate this person, but they're just telling their truth. I'm not guiding them to be this person. I'm just asking the questions. So that's like, to me, the goal is like to get their truth out. And then it's not really my job, I don't think, to question and say, like, I don't believe you. I say things like that, but it's not my place to say, like, I don't believe you feel this way or that way. It's just like, it's their truth and it's their hour. And everyone always says to me, like, I can't believe you gave that person a platform and that person a platform. I don't see it that way. That's my job. You don't like the fact that I had Max Boyens on, who's fired from Vanderpump Rules. He was fired for racist tweets. I had him on to break his silence. Months later, he still has not spoken to the media. That is an interview that I want. I never said I'm in favor of those tweets. And let me tell you something. Off the record, when people are secretly DMing, there's a lot of people that were on Max's side. I was shocked. I expected people to come for me. No, there was like hardly any backlash. And so many people were like, the poor kid. So there are a lot of people out there that feel there is this opposite side of cancel culture. But even regardless of whether it doesn't mean that I support these racist tweets that he sent because I interviewed him. I am doing my job. I will interview everybody who was fired for racially insensitive tweets. I want to interview all of them because that is what my show is. And then if you want to hate them even more, but I want to get behind it and see it. And I mean, there's only so much I can do. I mean, I asked Max if he's racist. I said, I did come for him. I said, you're not saying you're not racist, but why did you say this about the Black community? Why did you say this about the Asian American community? Okay, well, like, you understand, like, that doesn't go along with the fact that you're saying you're not racist. So I don't understand it. Like, I mean, after 45 minutes of like, well, then why did you send those tweets? And do you understand why it was wrong? And what have you learned? And like, you got to move on. So it's not my job to say, oh, you sent bad tweets and you're not allowed on my show. No way. Sorry. That's not my show.
Same with me, because I totally agree, because here's the thing with me. There are people, and I'm going to put them out in the universe, Morgan Wallin and D. Nightwing, two people from the reality TV and music world that have caused a lot of controversy. I still want to have both of them on because I still believe that they deserve their chance to tell their side of the story.
Right. And listen, there was a lot of things Max said that I was like, I'm cringing because I think he's going to be crucified for these statements. But it's not my job to stop him. I'm not saying them, So if you had an opinion of Max before and then you have it even greater after listening to my interview, okay. But a lot of people were on his side, and that wasn't even my goal either. It was just like, it's when you say, why are you giving this person a platform? Well, that's my whole job. That's why I'm going to give every person a platform, regardless of their beliefs, because I want to hear what they have to say. And then, yes, if they have complete racist things to say, I will hate them at the end on my own terms, and you'll probably hate them too. But that doesn't mean I don't want to hear from their own mouth in front of me, like, oh yeah, wow, all these things I've read about you are actually true. You really are an awful person, I'll say to myself. Not in relationship to Max, but you get what I'm saying.
I totally get what you're saying. But however, I want to go a little bit off from the reality world, because sure. I did recognize that you did have Amber Childers, who played the Colby Chandler on All My Children. She was also on The Master, and she was promoting you as well. So I decided to talk with her because that seemed like a very interesting direction to go into.
Well, that is a good observation. So the thing is, that's where we have gone. When I started this podcast and it became 5 days a week, again, it goes back to business. There is, and I say this podcast is 85% Bravo, 15% other. And the other is not just reality TV. It is true actresses, actors, singers, pop culture icons. I don't like to reveal guests before the show is out, but I can tell you, we have a lot of real actress and actors coming up. And at least two of the names are so huge that this is no ego. I don't even understand how I actually interviewed these two people. They are literal. They're each comedic. It's in the comedy world, and they are both names that they're older. They're definitely probably in their 60s and 80s, but it's a name that I don't care if you're 70 or like you're 15, you've heard of these two people, most people. So that was a conscious decision. It's a business again. At some point, I looked at my show and I said, I am not comfortable with a 100% Bravo show for a lot of reasons. If this network ever decides to say, like, we don't like him, he is drama, look at these questions, and we are going to send an email to every Bravolebrity that you're banned from going on this show. Not that they did or not that they would, or nowhere. I have a great relationship with the network, but no. Bad business model, guys. So this is why when you book me for the hour or the 2 hours on Zoom, and we're going over why your podcast isn't working and how to grow it, and like, it's business. And that's just a bad business model. So I said, let's diversify immediately. And then that's when I started doing other reality TV. And I am a lover of pop culture. So no, I don't think we're going to have like sports figures and political figures on, but especially like with actresses, listen, it's all a chain effect. So you're not booking the fourth actress until you can say, I have Amber Childers. Or so, especially in the beginning with the actors and the music people, I pretty much probably would have taken anyone that was a name, because and this is not in relation to Amber. I'm just like, we need to build up, because listen, when you go to these actresses and these music people, they do not want to hear about Ebony Williams and Countess Luann and Vicki Gunvalson. They want, who have you interviewed that is an actress? Let us know. We would like a list. Or actor. So it was like, I fell into like Kate Flannery from The Office. I had Michael Fishman from Roseanne, who played DJ Connor. So that's kind of how it all started. Now we've moved into some really big names. I have a lot of actors and actresses and music people coming up. But for Amber, it was one of those. I mean, she checks all the boxes. I think talking about Colby Chandler and Erica Kane and Pine Valley is huge. I had Sean Kanan, who played AJ Quartermain from General Hospital on. So that's something. So, I mean, that made me want to talk to her. I love the show You. I mean, forget about the fact that I love it, but Penn Bagley's in it. So now we can talk about You and Penn, and now I want to talk Gossip Girl. So I love when it's just like, and it's an expansive, okay, and you were in Ray Donovan, which I don't like, but people love that show, and Big Schreiber. But let's not forget that your ex-husband is Randall Emmett from Vanderpump Rules, who is now with Lala Kent, and they have a baby, Ocean Kent. So that certainly interests me, and it's certainly going to interest this damn audience. That's an example of a question that you just sit there and you're like, how is this going to go over? And we have to let's ease Amber into this one. But you're observant, because there is a lot of that. Like, if you just look now, we just have like Toni Basil, who sings Mickey. And
I was about to bring her up because that is, I'm sorry about this, Amber, but however, that interview with Toni, wow. Between all the stuff about David Bowie and Tina Turner, and then Michael Jackson, the claim about Michael Jackson, that was a whole, as a music person and does a lot of choreography and does like respects choreography as well. That was a touchdown, my friend.
The Michael Jackson thing, that's another example. That wasn't in my notes. That wasn't in my questions. That was nowhere to be found. It was, yes, we're going to talk Bowie and Tina and MTV and the 80s and Paula Abdul, because she's a choreographer and she worked with Quentin Tarantino and Julia Roberts. The Michael Jackson, that's an example of like knowing from having done this where the press is, and it wasn't planned. And when she mentioned Michael Jackson and basically said, I mean, you can Google it because it got a ton of press, that like taking a break from dancing and going back when they wanted him to go back out on tour is what killed him. That's when I was like, okay, the next 20 minutes are scrapped. And the questions I have, no one's going to know, but I'm putting an X through them in my head, and I need to stay on this. And I mean, are you really saying this? Are you really saying this? Because I'm giving you a chance to back up. And she was like, I'm sorry. In my opinion, taking a break from dance is what killed Michael Jackson. And then I was like, well, that is going to go all over the world. That's a pretty bold statement. But yes, I mean, and I also had on way back, I don't know if you know this, like I had on Taylor Dane. I had Taylor Dane on. So it's like, and I have, well, Toni Part 2 is coming up, and I have a major band coming up this next week from the 80s, which, love them or not, they sell out. Like they were just handed to me, and I know them and I know some of their songs, and I'm like, but then when I started looking, I'm like, wait, they are selling out arenas overseas still. So that is not being done by Toni or all these, like, you know, a lot of the 80s, like they're selling out like Madison Square Garden level. And then if you look at like one or two of their songs, they're like two of the biggest songs of all time. So, you know, it's not the band that you're like, oh, I love Def Leppard or Guns N' Roses or Duran Duran. It's not one of those, but it is a band that has like such good credentials. So I have a huge band coming up, and Toni Part 2. And I have more music than that. So if you like music, I'm telling you, we're just getting into these actresses and actors. And like I had Donna Mills from Knots Landing on. That was a good one. So there's music stuff coming. There is.
Okay, so I know I'm a huge fan of reality television because I got to get to your last person because he's also related to music very well. And with reality TV coming up, I guess I've been trying to get on this podcast and my platform for years, but I am so happy you got him. It's Frankie Grande, because I was wondering where he was during Big Brother All-Stars 2, because he would have been fantastic because he made it to the final of 16, and he's a celebrity Big Brother finalist as well over in the UK. He polarizes a whole lot of people, but also to learn that he was starting, he's the host of the Nickelodeon SpongeBob podcast, and not to mention his Madonna thing.
Yeah, Frankie so he was on twice. And that's the thing. It's like, I will never shy away from a question. I never look back and say, that person's not coming on now because I asked that person that question, or they'll never come back. I stand by everything I do in the moment, and I'm like, I wouldn't have done it differently. And if it bites me in the ass in the future, I don't regret it. So like Frankie's an example where he's not so easy to book, first of all. And then when he was on, he just had a great time. And literally like a month later, he told his publicist, like, I want to go back on. And so that is where my show is. Like, people are calling me now, and I'm not one to say no. And I'm like, okay, you have something new to promote, you can come back on. I have other things to say. But Frankie is the classic example of what I was just talking about. It's like you check the Broadway box, you check the reality TV box because you were on Big Brother, and then you were on celebrity overseas. Like, so you check the reality TV, you check music because you're related to Ariana Grande. You check, you have a superstar sister. You were a social media influencer before all of this. So let's talk about online hate and online bullying. He's also a alcoholic who is in recovery. I want to talk about that. Like, that's not an easy life or an easy struggle. And so like, let's explore that. And you've been on Broadway, and now he is going to be hosting a SpongeBob podcast. And there's just the more, and like, I want to talk about, it's June, like gay pride, like you, and that got a lot of press too. Like when he was on Big Brother, the first time, it was a different type of gay man that we were seeing on that show. I mean, he was unapologetically like shine like a Frankie, and I'm going to wear pink nail polish, and I'm going to have pink hair. And, just being an effeminate gay man doesn't make you any less of a man. And he's authentically himself. So I wanted to talk about that and the casting. And like, we've seen so many gay men on Big Brother, that you were a different type of gay man on TV at that time.
100%. I gotta say, I still get a lot of flack from people when I mention Frankie as one of my all-time favorite players. But he, in all honesty, if there's a Big Brother Legends, I would predict that he would be probably one of the people, because he brings in a lot of people, a lot of fans, love him or hate him. He does a lot of work, and he's a showman, and I need a show.
And that was the other thing too. Like, I've been so busy, like I've never had anyone from Big Brother. So now I'm like, you're checking this box. I have someone. So that's the other thing. When I look and I'm like, we don't have someone from this show. A couple weeks ago, I'm like, how could we have nobody from Survivor? So now I was like, listen, I want one of 5 people, period. If I can't get one of these 5, I'm not interested. And I went after 5 specific people. I'm like, I don't even want all of them at the moment because I'm very busy. I just want one of the 5, and my top 2, I got one of my top 2. So I have a great survivor coming up.
Congratulations on that. Congratulations.
There was a woman that I really wanted, and there was a man that I really wanted, and I got the woman that I really wanted. Maybe we'll have the man on too, but the woman I really wanted, and I'm sure if you really thought about it, you could figure out who it is. I think that personally, it's the best woman to ever play the game Survivor. That's just my opinion. But I mean, it could be argued, and that could bring up like 5 or 6 names. But I personally think this person is the best woman player, one of the best players. But if you want to break it down between the woman and the man that I each wanted, she's in the top just in general. I'd say top 2. She was in my top 2.
And that's incredible because we'll discuss that on camera because we got to continue this conversation. So now we got talked about your guests that made headlines. Who are your dream guests and why would they make an impact on Behind the Velvet Rope?
I feel like my dream guests always change because I've gotten a lot. Like, for instance, before I got her, Janice Dickinson was so high on my list. I was like, I want Janice Dickinson. She says anything that is on her fucking mind. She doesn't care. You're not going to cancel her because she doesn't give a fuck. And she had her own reality show, the Janice Dickinson Modeling Agency, and she was on America's Next Top Model, and there's no problem trashing Tyra. And she sued Bill Cosby through Lisa Bloom, and Janice checked every box. And then I got her. I'm like, okay, well. So it really is always evolving. I have a list and I go on and I'm like, okay, I didn't get these people, but I got all these people that are on my list. I mean, listen, I'm keeping this list reasonable. So I'm not including I would like Madonna and Cher. Okay, so let's just start there. But let's just assume that is not going to happen and we're being realistic. There's so many people. It's always changing. I mean, Ramona Singer does not do podcasts. She doesn't sit still for 2 minutes. So I think we would spar. We would have a moment. I would love Ramona. It would be a comedy of errors, and she'd probably be really freaking rude, and it would probably last 15 minutes, but I want Ramona. I mean, then, you mentioned Cher. Well, I'd love Chaz Bono. I mean, before Caitlyn Jenner was Caitlyn Jenner, Chaz Bono was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first out trans men that there was. And so, I mean, you're also Cher's your mother. I've met Chaz Bono in real life. We had a great conversation until I started going down the Cher road. And I'm like, I get it. I mean, nothing rude, but I just learned to read the room. And I'm just like, I get it. Chaz wants to talk about, Chaz would have stood there and talked to me about American Horror Story or really anything until I went down the Cher route. Because, I mean, I get it. You're more than just your mother. And it wasn't rude. Chaz was not rude to me at all. It just was I get it. But I would love a Chaz Bono. It's literally changing all the time. I mean, who wouldn't want Andy Cohen? I'm telling you, because of a couple of the names I've got that I have coming up, I've been thinking big. I don't think as big as Cher and Madonna, but my world has expanded because of some of the people that have said yes. Those are just kind of some that come to the top of mind currently. And not for nothing, I love Chris Harrison now, and I love Julie Chen, and I would love, Sharon and Kelly Osbourne each have been on my list forever. I love people that you just think are not gonna care. So it's always changing. But to your point, Melissa Rivers was on the top of my list before I got her. So is Perez Hilton. He's been on 4 times now. So you kind of get them, and then you're like, okay. And I mean, I really am a Gemini in that sense of you can come back. Melissa came back a 2nd time. She's welcome back a 3rd time. But it's never like that first time. I always want the shiny new object. And I'm always like, all right, well, I mean, you can come back, but I have some other targets at the moment.
Awesome. I hope that you get all those targets, but I always love my repeat guests who come on every time and bring it. Big shout out to Drew Manning and Mike Gross of Anabolic Aliens, and also my friend Drew Angelman as well. They all there are some of them who come on multiple times, and they bring it every single time. So I agree with you on that you have your favorites and you also have your stuff. Like, for example, this year alone for me, this was big because I got Desmond Child. He's been on one of my top of my lists for
He's
years.
a good one.
He was we talked for an hour, and it was just like, this is around the same amount of time that we talked. So it was a really good, you could tell about the conversation. So I definitely think that's great. And then, so we got to start winding down our conversation. So what are some of your favorite social media platforms?
Well, the best place to find me, listen, I'm on all of them. I am at Behind Velvet Rope on Instagram. That is personal. There's no "the" in the title. You can listen to Behind the Velvet Rope anywhere podcasts are found. But Instagram is my absolute favorite social media platform, at Behind Velvet Rope. There's no "the." I just love Instagram. And if I really believe, unless you're truly coming for me, and even then I might answer you, like, if you are going to take time out of your day to write to me about how much you love my show or talk to me, until it is physically not possible, and we are almost there, I feel it's like my duty to get back to my listeners. I do. I just feel like that is the least I can do. And it is really me on Instagram. Some of my other social media platforms, I have a team that may jump in and help. But if you write to me on Instagram, it is really me. So unless you come for me in such a way that this is an unproductive conversation, you can come for me all day. It's not going to affect me, but I'm not going to waste my time going back and forth with someone who's it's a waste of time. But you can come for me if you want. So that is a long-winded answer to the fact that I love Instagram.
And believe me, we'll make sure to put that on you, and I will not come for you if you don't come for me.
Let me tell you something. I never, and I can honestly say this, ever come for somebody first. Ever. I don't understand it. It has everything to do with the person that comes for you first. There is the bottom. This isn't open for discussion. It's a fact. Like, something is lacking in their life. They are insecure and feeling unhappy and miserable about their own life, and something you are doing, which is successful and good, it's something positive, is making them feel like shit about themselves. And that has everything to do with them and nothing to do with you. So A, I never come for anybody first because I enjoy my life. And B, 99% of the time, if you come for me, I don't even come for you back. I just say, thank you for listening to Behind the Velvet Rope. 1% of the time, you have caught me on a day where you are I'm like, you're not getting to me, but I am going to just give it to you because I can. And today is your day. And that happens like once every 4 months. I'm just like, I'm going to clap back because I never do. And I'm a human being. And today I just feel like doing it. But I never come for people. I don't understand it. I think this world has gotten out of control with social media and bullying. And I don't care about people coming for me. It's just like, this is truly why people are killing themselves. Truly. Over things like this. This isn't, read the cases. So that is crazy that young children, they just go down that rabbit hole. So it's crazy.
It is. And especially, I was watching The View the other day, and they were talking about how 44 different attorney generals were saying, no kid Facebook. I totally agree. Kids should not have Facebook until they're able to go into high school. Maybe senior year. That's the minimum for everything.
I think it would help. I don't know how that works and how you would stop it, but I think for all social media, that is not the worst way to go because we keep reading about these things over and over. This one was gay. That one was fat. This one was that. Whatever it is, when you're a child, this is your world. You hang on every word. And it's the thing about a bully is if you clap back, they vanish. So, but a child does not have the capacity to understand that. And it's crazy. So I always tell people, come for me. I don't care, but it's just, this world is sick. It's it's just out of control. So I think you're right. I think there has to be some way where people under a certain age do not have access to this.
I totally agree. So we got to end on a positive note.
Yes.
So why should my audience check out Behind the Velvet Rope podcast?
Well, I always say to people, if I have annoyed you here today, come and listen because you will not hear anything about me. It is a much different show. It is me getting the tea for all of you. So you will not have to hear me go on and on about the great guests I have. You'll be listening to the guests. I ask questions. Sometimes I'll say, yes, I'm a morning person. Yes, I'm this, but it's really not about me. I think what people say about my show, and I didn't set out to do this, but it's true. I've read enough reviews and comments. Like people have said it to me as I ask them questions. They're like, why am I answering this? But I am. I have a way, and this isn't an ego. This is just what people say, but it's true. Like I have a way of like relaxing you and disarming you. And we will ask a question about something very pleasant. And then my next question with the same face will be so just the bomb. Like, this is the question that people wanted Andy to ask, or this one. Like, and people are always like, I can't believe you asked that, but I've been dying to ask that for months. And so I will ask the question. Yes, every now and then, like with Amber Childers, who was all into being an actress, I did say this isn't going to go over so well when I ask about Randall and Lala, your ex-husband, and the woman that you basically accused of being a whore and a homewrecker. They're past that now, but that's not the point. We just did like a 50-minute interview about your illustrious acting career, and it's kind of cheapening this whole interview, but I cannot not ask you about Randall and Lala. So that is why you should listen, because I ask and I do not shy away from it, but somehow I do it in a way I think that, I don't know if it's a smile on my face, people answer. You don't have to answer. You can say, if you ask me something here today, Jacob, I can't even imagine what I wouldn't want to answer. But if I really didn't want to answer it, I would say, like, I just don't want to answer that. Like, I'm not upset with you. Let's just move on. It's crazy to me how people, I sit there and I pause and it's silent and then they answer. That is why it's not a standard interview. Let's ask textbook questions that you heard on Access Hollywood and Us. No, I'm going to like cut the bullshit, cut the cameras, like real life. What was going through your mind when this happened? I would like to know. And then sometimes people will say like, oh, she's this and that. I'll be like, is that your nice way of saying this about her? Because I'm hearing that. Like, I will stay on the topic and make you say the truth. And I really have to say, I cannot believe I'm saying this. The 4 years that I practiced law and 3 years I went to law school, it helps. It really helps me with this job, because you say things like, well, that's not what you said 5 weeks ago on January 3rd when you were on Watch What Happens. So what you just said is exactly the opposite of this quote from Watch What Happens. So one of those can't be true because they're I'm like a lawyer to these people. And I think that makes for a good interview.
And that sets you apart, my friend, in the podcast world.
It's hard, right? So that's why, and listen, it's an eclectic group of people. It's Bravo, it's reality TV, it's pop culture. It is music now. So I didn't even realize you loved music so much. We have a major band and a major 80s. Another, not even someone bigger than Toni Basil in the world of music. It's another woman from the 80s is coming. We got some like real names here.
I cannot wait. And you saw my eyes get so big when you mentioned that. So I am so impressed with all of your success. I know you plugged Instagram, but also please tell us what other social media where they can find you, and also all the platforms that Behind the Velvet Rope podcast is on, because I want my viewers and my listeners to go and listen to your stuff.
Well, I would say, yeah. So Behind the Velvet Rope, anywhere podcasts are found. Behind Velvet Rope on Instagram. Clubhouse. I'm on Clubhouse. If you type in my name, David Yontef, or Behind the Velvet Rope, stop on over to Clubhouse. I have mixed feelings about Clubhouse. I'm not so sure Clubhouse is going to survive long-term. That's just my honest opinion, especially with the world being open. But I'm on Clubhouse, so come and follow me there. We are on Twitter. If you type in Behind the Velvet Rope, you'll find it. I can't even remember what the handle is. Facebook. And I put clips of videos on YouTube. I don't put the full chat. I just do little clips. That always seems to work best for us. But Instagram and Behind the Velvet Rope on Spotify, Apple, Google, and anywhere podcasts are found are the main ones. And the latest thing I really want to build up is Clubhouse. So if you want to just follow us on Clubhouse, we will follow you back. That's about it.
Awesome. So guys, if you missed an episode of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, head to our channels on Apple Podcasts, Deezer, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Spreaker. Just type in Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar, JACOBELYACHAR, and you'll find it all there. And also, are you on social media? Because I'm on social media too. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Jacob Elyachar, JACOBELYACHAR. So David, this is my 10th anniversary in this field.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I started.
I don't think I knew this. Wow.
So, thank you. So, jakes-take.com is the blog that started it all. Before the podcast, there was jakes-take.com. There's articles, interviews, reviews. I'm so lucky that I've had the opportunity to talk to some pretty big names, some pretty big music icons as well. So, like the late Kenny Rogers, Gordon Lightfoot, be on the Dolly Parton, Cyndi Lauper. So I'm very blessed. And also I've covered America's Got Talent since season 7. And guys, AGT is heating up. And if you want to hear from some of season 16's brightest acts, head to jakestake.com because you will find the interview there. And guys, if you're able to, please consider heading to PayPal to keep jakestake.com and my platform up and running. I'm the only guy that does everything, including scheduling the interviews, preparing interviews, doing the editing and audio, and also keeping up with the web as well. So if you can and you're financially able to, please consider heading to PayPal. But otherwise, if you can't, please like the video, subscribe, and do everything. David, you are more than welcome to come back anytime you would like.
I will come back because I need to come back. And after you ask me a few questions, I need to ask you about Dolly Parton and Cyndi Lauper, neither of which are easy bookings. I mean, and of course, the late Kenny Rogers certainly isn't either, but Cyndi is tough, man. Don't go thinking Dolly's up here. And Cyndi is a tough cookie to nail down. So I got questions for you, so I will come back.
All righty. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Until next time, thank you for listening, and thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye.